Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Bull City Coordinators Duke Football Coverage Podcast. You can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. Check us out, bullcitycoordinators.com. Send us an email, bullcitycoordinators@gmail.com. And you can follow us on Twitter at Duke FB Coverage, where the DMs are open. Now, our next guest, I'm going to kind of get into this. There's a little bit of a backstory here, okay? One day I was not long after Mike Elko announced he was leaving to go back to Texas A&M. I opened up Instagram, which may have been my first mistake. And I saw an Instagram story, and there was somebody that I've seen a lot on TV. And she was smiling ear to ear, looked like she was having a great time talking about covering Elko, what turned out to be Elko's last game in Durham for the ACC network. And then it all clicked together how it happened, because I hadn't had a chance to talk to Steve Weissman yet, and figure out really what the story was. So I'm thinking to myself, now it all makes sense, because nobody could figure out why did Elko leave suddenly. None of it made sense.
Definitely not the money.
Correct. Nobody could really put two and two together on why all of a sudden he left to go to a job that he was obviously not.
Some commerce school?
Right. So who wants to go to a place where they say howdy all the time? So I see in there, in this Instagram story, the most recognized, noticeable, famous Tar Heel ever. None of them are known for athletics, as far as, actual sports performances in games on the gridiron or basketball. None, and not one, not a single one. And I see like the most famous Tar Heel there smiling happily, and it just clicks together. This is what happened. Carolina was worried because Elko had made these games close, the battle for the victory belt close. So they send in our next guest to try and sabotage the Blue Devil program. And that's how this next interview came about, is I reached out to the reporter about this to try to get some details on this, some confirmation. And that's how now I'm interviewing Marilyn Payne, who we all know is a reporter for the ACC network and for ESPN. Marilyn Payne, how are you?
I am great. I think you pretty much covered it there. The continued backstory. Ben made the joke about, obviously I was sent in to sabotage rapid ascent of the Duke football program. And I replied, you really ought to do some research. They sent me actually at the bowl game last year, didn't get the job done. Right? Tough look. I couldn't close the deal. I couldn't close the deal at Marine Corps Stadium last year.
But alternatively, you also said you covered the ACC championship game, right?
10 years ago.
And who won that game? Won Duke.
Florida State, right. So people that y'all can pick fights with, Duke fans, if you've got a real problem with me. It's not a short list, actually. I graduated from North Carolina in 2013, and I freelanced for the Rivals.com North Carolina site covering the College World Series because the Tar Heels were out in Omaha that year. And shortly thereafter, it's like a friend of a friend, Lauren Brownlow, I'm sure many of y'all are familiar with, had said that the Duke site, the Duke Rivals counterpart, needed someone to help cover Tuesday press conferences covering Duke football. As a student, I'd interned with ABC 11, so I'd actually already covered a game at Cameron Indoor, and I'd covered some Duke before, but one of my very first paid jobs right out of school was covering Duke football, and yes, that team that ended up in the 2013 ACC football championship game. I covered the North Carolina at Duke football game in 2012 as a senior for the Daily Tar Heel, where before the field looked like what it does now, students rushed the field. Duke was bowl eligible for the first time since, I believe, the 60s. It was a really long.
Not now.
I'm just kidding.
Right. Now wait.
No, so it's cool because I got to see Duke football. I mean, if you've ever met David Cutcliffe, everything you've ever heard said about the man is so true. And so my first one-on-one interview with a head coach was as an intern for ABC 11 at Duke's bowl game in 2012 down in Charlotte, where they played Cincinnati. They got rough kind of a couple of deals there when they've re-entered the postseason the first time around a decade ago. This season, obviously, when Mike Elko came in and took over and took Duke right back to a bowl game last year, things went much better. So arguments could be made, really, if you stop and think about it, that I'm responsible for some of the ascension too.
I'm not going to dispute that.
I'm just kidding. No,
But
and then
no,
because then I covered Duke also for like 4 seasons with WRAL from 2015 to 18 as well. So it's like I know the Duke football program as much as probably any other in the ACC. Truth be told.
here's two things I do want to say. Two things though. You mentioned Lauren Brownlow was a guest on this podcast. I need to reach back out to her. I'm loving the Young Gun podcast. I stopped for a while because I just couldn't take more misery from the Panthers. I just needed to stop, but it's a
I
great
haven't.
podcast.
Here's my thing: if Lauren Brownlow touches it, everybody should watch, read, listen. I'm not a pan. I don't care about the Panthers, and not because I'm apathetic because they've gotten bad. I've just never been a Panthers fan, so misery that I have evaded, I guess it turns out.
Well, you mentioned the Belk Bowl. I was at that game. Me, my dad, my brother, my uncle, my aunt. We were there. That was like the coldest day probably in Charlotte history, and we were up. We were up way up high. Okay, and I can't remember who it was. We thought went over the end zone towards the end of the game, and actually he fumbled, and it just. And then Kelsey becomes Travis Kelsey, and you know it took
No,
till
I think it makes the loss look a little bit better. 11, 10 seasons, 8 seasons later.
Yeah, so here's the thing. I enjoy this because this back and forth that we're having, and granted, I
You
will
knew you
admit,
knew you had a good guess when I came in with a commerce school.
I agree, I totally agree. I, so I have a theory, and we can talk a little bit about. I want to get your thoughts on Manny Diaz, but before we get to that, I think we should talk about how FSU got snubbed because I think it's significant for a couple of
Yeah.
reasons.
I mean, listen,
One,
he's a Florida State grad. Y'all got to hop on board if you're not already.
the Manny Mania, Buenos Diaz, whatever they're saying, I'm with it. Okay.
So many options.
I know. But here's the thing. So we're having this back and forth, and I'll admit I'm going to scale back my Carolina talk and football
No, I mean, go
because
for it. We can
no,
do
no,
it.
no, no, no. Here's why. Here's why. I mean, y'all have won 5 straight. I mean, I can't. What can I say? Like, hey, remember that time we gave you a win when we did the jump pass? I mean, okay, like I can't. Right. But the thing is, I realized in Florida State getting snubbed may change this. ACC teams don't have conference loyalty the way that other conferences do. And I feel like we all really just hate our opponents and the other teams. Have you picked up kind of on that? I mean, you've covered a lot of sports. You've been around the conference. What are your thoughts on that?
You know what? I got to give you a ton of credit here. I can't remember having heard that said or not said, but I don't know. I've never considered it that way. And I don't know that I completely disagree with you on that. And I think there are a few reasons why. One, this conference has made these divisions want to fight at one another about who had it easier or who had it nicer for so long that like there was this resentment from all the teams that had to play Clemson or this pride from all the teams that got to play Clemson for so long. And before that, Florida State also obviously in the Atlantic, which just give me one moment here. I mean, I think that resentment, first of all, from the teams to its structure was a part of it. And yes, you're right. Like, especially in North Carolina, I would say that is true. I also worked in Charlottesville, Virginia for a year. And it's interesting because it's football specific that I would agree with that. In basketball, needless to say, there's conference pride, right? And I think in ACC baseball, there is some, like, we don't have to get into the list of schools that Jim Phillips spends 35 minutes just to get through every fall before kickoff, right? When he lists off the accomplishments at ACC kickoff and the stature of the league when it comes to other stuff. Like, there is ACC pride from every school and I think from every fan base. But when it comes to football, I think the collective frustration around lack of respect causes this league to maybe have that truth to it. And I think the other thing too is like there's a little bit of self-awareness, like, right? Like whenever for so long it was Florida State was super competitive, but Miami was super competitive. I think when Virginia Tech was really good, it was kind of like some of the teams that come in. And I know Miami came in and then they didn't do what they were supposed to do, which was really elevate this league as a football school. Don't come at me. I know that that's the I know that that is the line, right? But I think it's a couple pieces. I think it's the history of when and how schools came into this league. And I think it's the structure of the league that has caused that because it's not because the rivalries are stronger in football. Let me be abundantly clear because, excuse me, the SEC would like a word. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State would like a word. So I don't know if we're still calling them the Big 12 or what over there, but and Texas and its 16 different rivalries in different directions. I learned about the A&M and LSU rivalry. I was at College Station a season ago. Like, it's not because the rivalries are stronger. I think it's because the structure of the league has not set itself up the way yet until now. I think the no divisions is just like A plus. What the heck took so long? Obviously, right? I'm not alone in that. So yes, you're right in the outcome, but I don't think it's because of the rivalries.
Um, so I did sort of steal this idea from Joe Giglio, who has this concept of the irate Giglio conference.
I love Joe.
Right. Great
Sorry,
guy.
was that too much?
I mean, well, when you were talking about teams who whine and complain about having to play other teams, I thought you
He
were
was the
referring.
first person that came to mind, right?
Correct. I thought you were referring to state fans, honestly. I mean,
It's a long list. I mean, Dave Clawson right now is a much more ornery and frustrated and feeling disrespected coach from a lip service standpoint than Dave Doran is.
Salty Dave. I like Salty Dave Doran though.
Listen, spicy Mike Norvell, he takes the cake.
Well, all right. One thing I'd like to follow up on, you
Yeah,
mentioned the
let's do an
lack.
FSU conversation. Sorry.
Well, we will. But you mentioned the lack of respect, and you mentioned Jim Phillips. One thing that a lot of fans are frustrated about is it doesn't seem like, and this is a long conversation that go back decades. The ACC doesn't really have a cheerleader, and we all felt as fans that if Alabama had gotten snubbed or Texas had gotten snubbed, the Big 12 and the SEC commissioners would have been out in force on TV doing a lot of interviews. Jim put out a statement. Jim Phillips put out a statement, but I mean, I know you do work for the ACC network, so I don't want to cause any troubles for you, but is there some way he could have like a regular recurring segment or get like deputized Coach K or somebody with that stature to talk about how
Well,
great
I
the
think
ACC is?
did you hear what you just said?
Yeah.
You recommended that a league put a basketball retired coach out to cheerlead for its football program. So again, that is in line with the ACC. Like that's a mockery question to ask. Like
No, no,
if
no.
the ACC sent out, and I understand look, I get Coach K's reach. I'm not naive to that, but that's
That's
kind of
why
the point.
that's why I brought it up is
That's kind of
because
the point. Is like
right.
it should be the commissioner, but I think there are a lot of things at play. One, the SEC has a different, and this is both the point and it's the answer to the point. Like they, the culture of that league is brash. It is arrogant. It is in your face like that. And maybe the suggestion is that the ACC should be that way more so. To let's not take our losses modestly, or let's not, you know what I mean, like let's not take the high road maybe on Florida State, the first undefeated Power 5 conference team to get left out of a playoff after being number 4 and then winning with, oh, by the way, they quarterback that they would not have played with should they have advanced to the college football playoffs. Like maybe class is not the answer here. Maybe a gentle statement is not the results, but I don't know that is a step, because I think there are a lot of intangibles at play, and I don't think that they make it okay that Jim Phillips has taken the route he has taken. I don't know. I think being mad at Jim Phillips is just like, where else can we put this anger that we have? You know what I mean? What was the issue? The team that should have been in the college football playoff got left out of the college football playoff. I do wonder in the longevity of the contract relationship, conference relationship and contract between the league and ESPN, like how do you toe the line of being really aggressive toward a committee that's chaired, oh, by the way, by one of your athletic directors? Um, you know what I mean? Like, how hard are you going to go? NC State's in your conference. You can't. I don't think that if you're in Jim Phillips' shoes, you don't have an easier route to go handle things the way that Greg Sankey does, given right now in this current era who's in charge of the playoffs. Also, let us all forget or not remember or whatever, pretend like it didn't happen, that the ACC joined this alliance that was literally the reason that there was not a 12-team college football playoff this season. So, like, if you're Jim Phillips, you've got the self-awareness, right? Of like, how much can I really go say when the chair of the board is a athletic director in the conference that I am in charge of? And two, what we thought was a really good move for, I don't know, 48 hours, 3 weeks, whatever it turned out to be during 2020, turned out to be the partnership agreement and relationship that one of those conferences didn't pay a minute of mind to. The other conference that was involved is now defunct. And the three of us are who voted to not have a larger playoff. So like, I'm not just like defending Jim Phillips blindly here, but like, how do you address that? There's a lot of ownership that would have to go into handling that the right way, and it's a really hard needle to thread. I don't know that there's not a better way to do it, but I don't know that it's as easy as it is for other commissioners.
I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from.
Is
Like,
all the other dumb stuff that's
no,
involved.
well, right. It's the lead up to that. Jim Phillips is not, I wouldn't say, a popular commissioner in the ACC. The alliance, I looked them in the eyes. We don't need anything. I'm an attorney. What? What? No, son. Come on. And so when he's just kind of silent and not saying something, and the reason I mentioned Coach K as being the cheerleader is he had always talked about, hey, we've got to talk up the ACC. That was something he already did, always did.
Sure. I mean,
But
I know you're not going to like this,
no,
but Matt Brown's a better
that's
option.
that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. But he's
A Hall
coaching.
of Fame football coach.
I agree. If he were retired, he should be deputized. He would be the
We
only other.
asked him, so we asked him first week in November because I was over there for a game. We asked him if he was interested in being in the commissioner of college football, and he was basically like, "I wouldn't get near that with a 100-yard pole."
Hmm.
Which
Well, who?
probably disappointing to a lot of people, but you know, he in the sense that, right, it's to the point of everything that's at play. It's like, it's just not. Again, I'm not saying I like Jim Phillips. On a one-to-one basis, I think that he has done a lot of things, you know, as an old school ACC person, than anyone else who really wants the ACC to change. Apologies in advance, but like, I love talking to people about the 17,100 things that the ACC has done that other conferences can and don't. I don't think that simplifying everything just down to football is the answer. I do think football ultimately obviously has to break free from other sports, but for where we are right now in college athletics, we're not there yet. And so choose your battles, you know, and I'm not privy to really anything people might assume I am just because I work on college football with ESPN, but I think that there is tact involved. Is the tact too much? That goes back to what I initially said. Like, where do you decide that class and tact and taking the high road and not saying something that goes against what you voted for 18 months ago? Like, was that the right answer? Is that the wrong answer? The responsibility is not in the ACC to respond. The responsibility is on the College Football Playoff Committee to put Florida State in the college football playoffs.
Okay.
That's how I really feel.
Agree, 100%. So we also agree Mac Brown should retire and become the ACC spokesperson. You said that, I'm sure. I think that's what you said.
I think that is a great option.
Well, and the ACC needs somebody.
But then you can't do that. People are still mad that John Swafford was the commissioner. as a North Carolina representative, my gosh, if we went from one to the other, some people, some fan bases would explode.
Okay, that's fair. Here's kind of what I think is he doesn't have to necessarily be the commissioner, but he needs to be the TV rep for the conference. He needs to be like an ambassador for the ACC. Because I don't know who else. It's either him, Coach K, and then who else would be on that list of people that could have the media reach that would be necessary for the conference.
I mean, here's the deal. Florida State, here's the other half. Like, if you're Jim Phillips, how hard are you going to go in the paint for a team that begged to leave you all summer? Arguably, you would want to go harder, right? So they'll stay. But if you're Florida State in this situation, does all your complaining feel a little bit validated and unfair? Unfortunately, probably so. But if you're Commissioner Phillips and you just went back and forth with the president of Florida State University for, and I'm assuming they talked over the summer, right? When all that was going on, I would think there would have been like one phone call. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
You up,
Like if it's
FSU?
Clifton and Dabo Sweeney's been like nice to you since you got there, might look a little different.
Let me let me ask you this because
And
we've
I just
been
thought of that when I like kind of talked myself through it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just think it's like there's so many other factors in play that are specific to this scenario.
okay. Let me follow a little bit on the issues with the committee because it wasn't just FSU; it was also SMU should have got the bowl that Liberty got, and Boo Corrigan's explanation
So,
about. I mean, come on, like, oh well, they just kept winning. Well, so did Florida State with backups. One of whom, Rodemaker should have been playing, but for that dirty play from Florida. And the cognitive dissonance that, speaking of someone who's not talking much, Boo Corrigan, that he engaged in to try to Jedi mind trick us to understand that. So let's talk about the snubs, and let's just go with Florida State because they're in the conference right now. You watch a lot of football. I'm sure you've seen that team. They're good, right? I mean, they deserve to be in.
yeah, the team is good. The D line, the linebackers, the DBs. Johnny White is an NFL wide receiver, and he's the second best receiver they have. Like, it's 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 a freaking travesty. That offensive line, when we were there week 2, so right after they beat LSU, it's a night game. They've got Southern Miss. Like the O line at that point was the O line in the all of FBS college football that returned the most starts. Like that team is so good. The issue also, people we can fight if we want to fight teams. Florida for the dirty shot, great mention by of you. Georgia for losing. It's yeah, Florida State got screwed. I it's it is what it is. I was, what's what parents say? I'm I'm not surprised. I'm just disappointed. A little bit of that.
Um, let me let me ask you this. So, what do you think the narrative would have been if Alabama wins a conference championship or Georgia wins a conference championship with a third string quarterback? I don't imagine it would have been what we heard about Florida State. And that
No, it would have been what I just said, verbatim. You would have had Jordan Rogers on Sports Center talking about how Georgia has an entire NFL defense, how they just set an SEC record for tackles for loss in the history of the league in a single game in their championship, how they found a way to win because of their veteran, experienced, tough, physical, huge offensive line, which, yes, has endured injuries, but continued on nonetheless. How they have 2 wide receivers, one of who is 6'7" and still not the best on the team. The league's returning rusher, who exceeded this year what he did last year, even with a Heisman candidate quarterback, who didn't get to play thanks to an out-of-conference rival who took a dirty hit on their second string quarterback. Now the second string quarterback's out. Like, that's what you would have heard.
and And you would have heard the second string quarterback will be back in time for the bowl game.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's frustrating because I think that that's pretty agreed upon at this point. You know, because you wouldn't like you would literally probably hear somebody from, and that's no shade to Jordan Roger, by the way. Like he's fantastic to watch. Really enjoy his work. Like it's just they would have the lead analyst for the network, like EJ Manuel, does fantastic work. He's on Sports Center every Saturday morning with Kevin Connors, and I that's usually what I have on, especially when I've got a noon or a 3 o'clock game. And he's talking about every quarterback in the country. He doesn't just talk ACC, but it's just the conversation's not the same. And here's the issue: myself, others, all of us collectively, I think that we have been in this like little, I don't want to call it denial, but this like optimism around like, oh, look at our league record in the ACC against the SEC this season. Look at how good Florida State is. It's, it's been this belief that we have shared. If we can say there's no conference pride, there might be some truth to that, but the places where there's not are this. We have had a shared belief that that would not have happened to Florida State. Was that realistic? Probably not. The tough thing, and you mentioned Boo Corrigan and his back and forth, these are not his words, these are the entire committee's words. They pick and they choose from one week to the next, just based on the weight of what they're seeing, which principles are held the highest. There are 23 measuring sticks, made that number up, and they move around in terms of which one's weighted the heaviest. And we thought undefeated conference champion would be weighed the heaviest. We hoped, if you're an ACC fan, we hoped that a big win against a Louisiana State University team would have mattered more than it did, and it just didn't. I don't know. It's like I'm mad and I'm sad, and it's a bummer. And for the Knowles fans who were fantastic when I was down there, I hate it. And for the structure and the stature of the league, it sucks, because I think that result will have an impact greater on this league faster than anything else has ever had on a selection Sunday.
Here's why I attribute the words though about Liberty to Boo specifically, because he could have just said Liberty was undefeated, SMU was not undefeated. It was a toss up, but we went with the undefeated team. Now that would have got him in the same trouble, right?
Yeah.
So, however,
that's why I say the measuring stick moves.
Yeah.
Like and it's not, the thing is, like, how far down the list do we want to go? I made a joke on a post on our ESPN college football Instagram page whenever they posted about the lawsuit. And I was like, great, should UCF get involved? And I was kidding, and people can't read sarcasm on the internet except for me and you, and that's how we're here. But like, people lost it on me, and they were like, it's not the same. I was like, it's not the same. But that's the point, is like, if you go down, like Auburn, I saw Auburn fans made a joke like, don't worry, FSU, it's happened to us too, undefeated, and didn't end up at the postseason where they wanted to be. And different eras of football, right? Like UCF was not even in the Power 5 at that time. They just joined the Big 12 this season. But it happens to somebody every season. This year, yes, it happened to two teams. I think there was a Cincinnati team not too long ago that got gypped, maybe 3 seasons ago. It happens. This is the first time it's happened at this caliber and this height, but
yeah, I think
not a perfect system, and next year it'll be differently imperfect.
Well,
We'll
this
have
is
new things to complain about.
so this is kind of what part of the issue is, and you're seeing it unfold with how NIL is developing and impacting the portal. And I'm fine with the portal, I'm fine with NIL, but it went from something that maybe we thought it was going to be to what it is now, which is more teams finding ways to say we're going to get our boosters to put together enough
But
money.
it was always going to be.
Well, right, but here's the point. But here's the point that I'm making is some people foresaw that, right? Some people foresaw that. And then the thing with the alliance, the thing with not expanding it, Jim's job and the commissioner's job, and Jim works for the presidents, I get that. The president's jobs in part are to foresee those things, right? Like, I'm a casual fan. I don't follow a lot of the developments as closely as I should, but that's not my job, right? So the frustration, I think, is to the point that you raised, it's not just Florida State got left out because this is the last year of the 14 playoff. It's there were 7 things before that, right? So I guess obviously conference restructuring, which is what I call realignment, is about 7 years away before it gets really hectic. I think if you look at the TV deals in those 7 years, what can the ACC do to solidify its brand? I mean, you cover it closely. I mean, what do you think we can do?
I love that you ask what the league can do to solidify its brand rather than itself, right? Because we just saw the expansion. And this is the truth, right? It's the answer has not changed. The league must win. The league must next year position a 12-0 team that has also beaten like an 11-1 team, and 2 of the wins from the 11-1 team need to be against a Big Ten and an SEC opponent. Why did Florida State play Mississippi State? Southern Miss week 2. Take the cupcakes off your schedules. Why is North Carolina? And look, I love Mike Mentor. I think what he's done at Campbell has been fantastic. It's awesome. It was really wonderful to hear him talk about the impact of being able to play North Carolina as a program. Take him off the schedule. If the league wants to continue to solidify itself, it has to, and right, so the way that the scheduling continues to change every year with the expansion of the league, the scheduling has to get stronger, and then the teams, not to the point that they, the good teams beat the good teams out and then there's no undefeated team left, but like it just, there have to be more teams that are better. Just goes, the comment we made it earlier, the statement about Miami and how the expectations around them as a football program joining the league was higher. Clemson's got to get on board with NIL, presumably, or do something to be the Clemson that everybody hated for beating everybody. And apparently, what was it? 70% of the wins from between the ACC and the SEC were in the Atlantic Coast Conference favor. I'm probably exaggerating that percentage, but the number's got to be higher. It's win, and here are the different ways.
Well, so Florida State plays LSU and Florida, right? Beats them both. One with 2 backup quarterbacks, right? Mm-hmm. And beats the Heisman candidate and winner, right? But somehow that's not enough. And so that's
team is not enough. It was not enough when it was Florida State the first time. It was not enough when it was Clemson.
No, I agree with that. And so the problem though that I have is, I guess part of my somewhat cynical nature is the winning will help and it'll go a long way, but when it's crunch time and it's the ACC versus the SEC, what's going to be the differentiating factor? And the conference has 7 years to do it before we start to get worried about what's going to happen.
If it takes more than, I don't know, 2, there won't be 7 years. Because those buyouts, you're a lawyer, you know what they look like as you get closer to the end date. It can't take 7 years.
Well, so the thing, if you look at when I spent more time than I needed to studying this over the summer. If you look at when the movement comes, it comes about 3 or so years before those TV deals end, right? Because you usually have a clause that when you announce you're leaving, you're pretty much stuck for 2 years. You can afford a 1-year buyout, right? Maybe a year and a half. But the ACC's going to be the last of the major, what was it, P4? Is that what we're down to now officially? Almost. It's going to be the last one for the TV deal to get renegotiated. So all the real crazy stuff's going to happen in about a window of 2028 to about 2033. I just think
that there will not be nearly as many things like they are now then. I think pieces will change. And I don't want to say explicitly too much more than that because it's all guess by me. But networks can be sold off. Amazon's somebody showed me a picture of the Amazon production trucks for Thursday Night Football. They use 8, the size of the one that is used for like your traditional standard primetime ESPN game. The money that busts these contracts up, I don't think necessarily has to come within the conferences. And I'm not saying that Amazon's going to buy Florida State out of the ACC if they want them to, but you know what I mean? Like money gets sent in one direction, and suddenly that one conference's television deal looks a little bit different than it did 2 years ago. And I'm not saying it will or it won't. I just think that I don't think things stay exactly as they are for 7 years. I just don't think there's any way. I think the ACC, right? So then the follow up question is, how does the ACC suddenly get that much better, that much faster?
Well, part of me thinks is it's hard for me to see the kind of money continue to get paid out with the next Big Ten SEC media deals, although it's possible. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that.
I mean,
But
we probably would have said that 10 years ago too.
but that's the thing. Exactly. It could
So I
go
agree with you, and we're both probably wrong.
right. I'm not going to predict that, right? I think though that what we're seeing is, and you heard about this kind of super conference deal where everybody kind of moves up a level, and where I'm still not 100% clear on the details, and I haven't wanted to delve into that because at this point it's really like Premier League soccer.
I'm not
Or
caught up on the conspiracy theory.
no, I saw something. It's trying to, so the NCAA basically talked about creating the super conference for kind of certain levels and differentiating the tiers really clearly with
Football teams that are paying us a higher than an X dollar amount to toward NIL for players.
right. The idea being that this way we don't have to employ the players, and the corollary of that is, putting on my lawyer hat, we don't have to worry about workers' compensation claims for these people, okay, and put them on lifetime
I mean,
medical awards.
certainly the NCAA's involvement is paramount. That's why we're still here. But I think from a competitive advantage standpoint, and there are teams in this league that I've covered this year, who, very much to their credit, these coaches are not like whining about it. They're just like, this is our reality. We don't have the same salary cap as some of our competitors do.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, that is what it. I mean, we'll just have to see how it plays out. It's here's kind of where I think where we're going with this, and I don't know. It's hard to predict, so I don't really want to make predictions. But I mean, what? When are we just going to rip the amateur label off of this, and just start talking about this as a professional or semi-professional kind of league?
Well, we're not, because you have, I should know these numbers off the top of my head, but how many football programs in Power Five, and how many of those would actually become like semi-professional if it ever happened, or when it happens? It's like, I don't know, 30%, 40. It's not every team, and it's not every team in the Power, however many, five still for another 2 weeks, month. It's And so I don't think amateurism is going away. It's just the teams that headline most conversations would be in a different tier of it, in theory, if these things happened. But you have, and I think the thing too, to almost like defend player opportunity here a little bit, how do you then legislate or control players right now who are coming from the CAA or North Dakota State in the Big Sky, or pretty legitimate non-Power 5 programs as transferring into these conferences, playing in the SEC, playing in the ACC for a dream team to some of these guys who didn't get these offers out of high school. What would ripping the amateur label off do to impact athletes who right now are really in a great opportunity to showcase themselves even if they weren't ready when they were 18 or 19 years old. So that's another question that would just have to be addressed in the same way. And I'm not saying that should prevent the whole thing from happening, but it's a piece of the conversation, right? Like, yeah, the NIL piece, but then if you recategorized or restructured high level college football, how could you do it in a way that doesn't become prohibitive toward these men who are kind of in between or going to be conference player of the year and then transfer and go to Texas A&M and get to play in the SEC?
Well,
And can you continue to preserve their rights, which is what this whole thing's been about, if you make those changes?
I would like for my team to be in a conference and in a level where they can win and be competitive, and that would be fantastic. But apparently, I'm 40 years behind the eight ball here. Everybody wants to be Maryland. However, here's what I was referring to with the super conferences. This is from an article from JD Supra, uh, dated December, well, today. NCAA President Charlie Baker recently proposed rule changes that would transform how college athletics have operated since its inception. His proposal would allow D1 schools for the first time to pay their athletes in ways not tied to educational resources, parentheses, in a form other than academic scholarships, close parentheses, period, full stop, new paragraph. I used to dictate a lot of letters. So um, that's what I was referring to with the super conferences, and that goes back in all the divisions that you're talking about. And I guess we're going to have this weird Hoosiers kind of movie come out of this eventually,
I haven't
where
seen it. I'll have to get caught up.
you've not seen Hoosiers. Oh,
I don't watch a lot
ouch.
of movies. This is like I just don't have the attention span.
Okay. Well, that hurts my soul
I
a
have
little
seen
bit.
Hitch roughly 400 times. It's my favorite movie. It's the best movie that's ever been made. I'm a connoisseur of fine cinema.
Um,
You're like, I'm ready to end the podcast now.
I'm just thinking about. I have a Raging Bull poster
I
in
was
my
in fact
office.
watching Hitch when Will Smith smacked Chris Rock.
Is that? Remind me what that one's about. I don't think I've seen it.
Dating coach.
Yeah. Okay. I remember the previews. I think when it. Okay. Yeah. I remember that one. All right.
Kevin
I got
Diggs
you. I
before he became a meme.
I am not promising you that I will commit to watching that movie.
Not saying you have to. It's your
Okay.
life. If you want to live it poorly, that's your choice.
Hey, I'm comfortable with my movie choices. Other decisions I've made, maybe not so much, but I will
Let's talk about
stand.
Manny Diaz. You want to?
Yes. All right. Manny Diaz. I'm excited. I think it's a great hire. I think he's going to bring a lot to the school. There was some rumor that Trooper Taylor was leaving. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. Jacquez Moore pulled his name back out of the portal. Manny Mania in effect. What are your thoughts on the Diaz hire?
I think it's a good hire. I whenever the A&M job came open, inevitably, I kind of was like, oh well, if they talk to Mike Elko, I imagine he would take it unless Duke can like miraculously match their offer, which just didn't seem plausible. Because Duke's got money, but Texas has oil. And it's look, I've heard everything there is to hear, and will forever probably wonder about some of the exit details, right? In terms of tone and relationship, but um, I don't know a person alive who would turn that down. And so Elko goes, and my immediate thought was like, is there a no-brainer hire? And there really wasn't. And so I think Manny Diaz, you know, the Miami thing was like I get how it went the way that it did for him because it's Miami, but it's not like he had a 30% win percentage down there. And he was a first time head coach, and he's obviously been pretty miraculous at Penn State. So I think I like it. I think I like it until proven otherwise. I think you said it, Jack was more immediately hopping right back out of the portal says a whole lot about his reception among the players. I hope Trooper Taylor's not leaving. He's fantastic. Um, Unless he got like his dream job somewhere else, in which case I'd be very happy for him. But like, I really hope he stays and continues into his third tenure now. After the bowl game.
Here is my thought on Manny Diaz and coaches leaving. I do want to say though, I don't think the A&M job is as great as people
I
make it
don't
out to
either.
be.
My
So
dad
when
and I got in an argument about it. I was like, you're gonna hop out of the cushiest king size bed in America to jump onto a flaming hot cast iron skillet.
it's a hot mess in A&M and historic. Well, okay, I just don't think that's that great of a job. I'm glad you and I
Either.
agree.
I'm sure Kevin Sumlin would agree.
I thought, well, and I mean, they when they pay that much money to get rid of someone, I don't think you should feel confident about the room you're walking into.
Unless they have suddenly had a miraculous change of heart, I agree.
I had this conversation with someone recently. I said people don't really change; they just hopefully learn to moderate their worst behavioral instincts.
And maybe they have. I don't know. But at the same time, like if you're a college football coach and you have coached at Texas A&M, you've coached in the SEC, that's the dream. I don't know. I mean, coaches are people too. Lest anyone forget. And yeah, those people should have, compassion for those around them and things like that. But like, it's not. No, I think it's a scary job to walk into. I also would have taken it if I was in his position.
Here is you mentioned Trooper Taylor leaving. There was a report from like Aggies 247 or something, and then there were some people closer to the Duke program who have said he hasn't accepted anything. Nina King put out a tweet today saying Trooper is still the interim head coach and he's going to coach in the Birmingham Bowl. I haven't seen anything official, and as we all learned from the Gasparilla Bowl and the Sun Bowl and everything else that happened with bowl season and that fiasco, wait till it's official. I will say though, and I don't want Trooper to leave. I want him to stay. I just finished reading Seneca's letters. This is from letter, I believe, 91. And we should keep in mind that things do change. And this was a letter about a city that had fallen suddenly and unexpectedly. He wrote and said, "So it is only right that we should bear the overthrow of cities with resignation. They stand just to fall. Coaches come to schools just to leave eventually. Let's just hope they leave the right way and they leave something good behind. But I do hope Trooper stays. On the Diaz hire, I think I want to get your thoughts on Miami because we've talked a lot about Miami and about how it's just been down. It's been down since I think I was in law school, just back '05 to '08. It's been a while, been a minute. I mean, Diaz was doing at or better than what you were getting from my, and it's not like Cristobal's done better since he came there, right?
Mario has won. Um, I believe it's all about the Aggies, baby. I believe his win this year against Texas A&M, and somebody fact check me because I'm trying to remember this. I think it was bigger than at the time, right? Because A&M was really good to start the season, which makes the Jimbo situation funnier. But I think that was a bigger win than much of what I can remember when Manny was in Miami.
Yeah.
I worked this year with Orlando Franklin, who played in Miami, and George Sedano, who is a Miami guy through and through. Although he went to FIU, and I wish I had one of them here to be like, "Can I phone a friend?" What was Manny
Well,
Diaz's biggest like win during his
no,
time?
not disputing that, but going through Cristobal's
Yeah.
record since he's been at Miami, 5-7 and 7-5. Should have been 8-4, but he doesn't know how to take a knee. So, which justice for the 2015 Halloween night
Oh, one of the
in
most
Durham.
miraculous things I've ever seen in person.
You were there?
Nobody
Conspiracy
listened when I said I've covered Duke, did they?
conspiracy theory. It hits. It hits. I'm just saying you were there when that happened. But
Oh.
my
And
only point
do you
is,
know one of the special teams assistants for that play actually ended up on Duke's coaching staff last year? He's no
which
longer with them, but he came back.
really,
He was a
Oh,
defensive um, analyst last year for them.
I had John Latina on the podcast a couple of years ago, and he talked about that, and he said that the the officials didn't overturn the call because they didn't think they'd get out of the stadium alive, which was odd because
I've heard that before.
there's not normally a lot of people in Wallace Wade, but I think he was on to that was handled badly. But we're on what day 2 or so of the Diaz era, so maybe it's all going to be perfect and happy, right? Hope
Good,
springs eternal.
good. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm really excited for the hire. I don't. I'm interested to see too, and this is actually a question that I hope you can like poll your listeners or something, but what is Duke fans' football expectation now? Because obviously, look how miraculously it's changed in the last 2 seasons. A friend of mine, Rebecca Fiorentino, she worked for Duke Athletics for 8 years. She was the in-arena women's basketball reporter at one point, and she still really loves Duke. And she was like the first person to text me, and I said, "Look, imagine you're Nina King, your first hire." Your first hire for a football coach, replacing David Cutcliffe, goes so well that a freaking mega SEC program comes and steals him away in the middle of the night. That's huge, man. Like, so where are expectations now? That's what I'm most interested to see in the offseason and season to come.
Um, for this season, I will say it's going to be hard to know for a while. We got to see how the roster is going to shake out. But I think most Duke fans want to be back where we're going bowling every year. Beyond that, I think we'll take anything as a plus.
I think Manny Diaz is sitting right where y'all want to start. And I think he will.
I hope Diaz does well.
I
What
just genuinely think he will.
yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. So, are you covering any bowl games this year? And if so, what are they?
Yes to bowl games, no to current ACC. I have Texas Tech and Cal Saturday the
You
16th.
said no
I
ACC.
said
Future.
current ACC. Word choice matters. It's what I do for a living. And I said it on purpose because no current ACC teams. I have Texas Tech and Cal Saturday, December 16th at 9:15, 9 o'clock p.m. From the beautiful Shreveport, Louisiana. Never visited. We'll see how it goes. I think it's supposed to rain, but both teams are run heavy offenses, so it shouldn't impact what I think is going to be competitive anyway. So excited for the competitive nature that I really hope comes from that one. Texas Tech is really excited. They have a lot of significant players who are staying and coming back. So I think it's always great when that happens in bowl games. And yes, Cal, I get the first ACC introduction to the Golden Bears. So we'll see. And I have the Hawaii Bowl, December 23rd, 10:30 p.m. Coming at you live from Honolulu. Coastal Carolina will be making the longest trip in the country for bowl season. And San Jose State is their opponent.
That's a hike for the Chanticleers. It's a long way.
It is, yeah. It's a 9 hour flight for me from Atlanta, so add 2.5 to that at least.
Now, if you meet Marshawn Lynch at the bowl game, will you introduce him or refer to him as a future ACC legend?
Fantastic question. I will email Jim Phillips tomorrow and ask him if I should.
So, Marilyn, you were kind enough to come on here. I didn't even get into asking you about your work on the sidelines when you are reporting because we've been going for about an hour and a half, and I know you probably have other things that you would like to do. So I'm going to give you an open mic.
So yes, open mic on sideline. I think that's it. It's
No, anything. You get an open mic on anything. Doesn't have to be sidelines. You get an open mic on anything you want to talk about. No pressure. It's kind of a big deal part of the podcast.
anything.
Anything. If you want to talk about Hitch, knock yourself out.
Hitch is the best movie that's ever been made. And that's because it is suspenseful. It's a little action packed. They get on jet skis at one point. Um, Eva Mendes is in the movie, which reason alone to watch it, I would argue. Will Smith is charming. He doesn't slap anybody. In fact, he gets smacked. It is a romance and a comedy. Nobody I've ever met has been able to do any of the following. Tell me if it's a movie made for men or women. It's both. Tell me if it's a comedy or a romance more. Nobody can really answer the question. It's the best. It's the best of every world. I have polled the internet as to who the best character is, and there's another hung jury because the options are simply too abundant, and you can watch it every day for the rest of your life and never get sick of it.
Have you seen the Will Smith movie I Am Legend?
Maybe
He was very good.
it's the like is it robots?
That is iRobot.
No, I have
That's
not seen I Am Legend. I haven't. I can see the cover, I think, but no, I'm not like a Will Smith mega fan. It's my favorite movie.
uh iRobot, not remotely good.
Noted.
Not very good. The short collection of stories that was based on, very good, by Isaac Asimov, which
Okay.
the show Foundation on Apple is also based on a series of Asimov novels. I'm getting into some real heavy nerd stuff. I apologize. But I Am Legend is a it they you've got to watch it with the
Maybe
alternate
I'll watch it on
ending.
the way to Hawaii. I'm gonna
You'll
need.
have time. Make sure you watch it with the alternate ending, the one that the studio cut, which made it make sense. The
I'm
way
gonna
that
have that on Delta.
that's, well, obviously, but the ending that they put on there was done in response to test audiences, and it really ruined what had been a really good movie. And you're like, what's happened here? I mean, what is going on? But he is
I'm
phenomenal.
probably the test audience member who voted for the ending no one likes.
I'm just telling you, he is phenomenal in that movie. It's very, very
I
good.
will I
And,
will put it on the list of movies that I make when I tell people I'm gonna watch the recommendations, but never do.
well, that's okay. It
It's not
happens.
personal, it's just me. I'm the problem.
Well, well, that's a Taylor Swift reference, right?
I'm not a
Um,
Swiftie.
okay, all right. Well, my daughter is, and my wife is, so I'm trying to.
Oh, I know. Okay, I get how you got there. I remembered that song. Okay. No, it was not a Taylor Swift reference. Whoops.
Okay. Well, I was sort of proud of myself for a moment that I got it. I'm going to keep that moment of pride that I had.
You should.
I'm going to keep that.
There is now on the record, you are more of a Swiftie than me, which is clearing a very low non-existent bar, but you can still hold on to that.
I will take that. And I will run with it and do whatever I can with it. There's something. So
Somebody will validate you. It's just not me.
I'm not seeking validation. Believe me. If I wanted validation, I don't think a Duke football podcast.
With a Taylor Swift reference is where you would go.
Look, let me tell you, this has been wide ranging. We referenced Seneca's letters. Okay. We referenced Isaac Asimov. We've referenced Taylor Swift.
I think that
Uh,
was all you, honestly. I don't think I had anything to do with any of it.
well, you led me there, is what I'm saying.
I,
Okay.
all right.
I wouldn't have got into the Will Smith stuff had you not mentioned Hitch. So,
It's my favorite movie. And it's yeah, that's no, that's the worst open mic that could have ever existed. I should have talked about something meaningful, but oh well.
well, if it's meaningful to you, right? So there's that.
It was the first thing that you mentioned it, and I was like, yeah, we'll go with that.
Well, like Rick said in Casablanca, we'll always have Paris. We'll always have Hitch. So, ladies and gentlemen, listen to the podcast. You know where to find us. Go to our website, bullcitycoordinators.com. We got some more interviews lined up. We are going to talk to a Troy beat writer soon to bring you up to speed on the Birmingham Bowl. We'll get you ready. And we are going to start the irate Giglio ACC conference. We're going to have some conference loyalty, though, to make up for FSU's unjust snubbery. and out of the college football playoff. It was terrible. It was garbage. It was awful. We will rally behind the Seminoles. And on that, we will also say, let's win in the bowl game. I'm going to be there in Birmingham. I'm looking forward to it. And as always, go Duke.